My name is Lisa, and I once believed I had everything neatly in place. I held a prestigious position as the head of marketing, shared a loving relationship with my husband, Ethan, and enjoyed a stable, comfortable life. Financially independent, I took pride in handling our mortgage payments on my own, which added to my sense of achievement. The family was central to our existence. Ethan's younger brother, Brian, and their mother, Amy, were constants in our lives. Having lost their father years earlier, the brothers were devoted to their mother, which I admired deeply. It was heartwarming to see, and it made me appreciate Ethan even more for his dedication to his family. Amy initially seemed to approve of me. During family gatherings, she would engage me in conversations about my job, often remarking with a nod, "Marketing, huh? Sounds important." It was reassuring to feel accepted and valued by Ethan's family, and I was eager to integrate fully into their close-knit circle. Our early years of marriage were filled with joyful weekends, holiday meals, and spontaneous family game nights. I recall one particularly lively Thanksgiving at Amy's, where the laughter and chatter filled the room, creating a warm, inclusive atmosphere. It felt right to belong to this family. However, a shift occurred during a New Year's Eve celebration at Amy's. While refilling my wine glass in the kitchen, I accidentally overheard a conversation that would start to change my perspective. Amy was mockingly commenting on Julie's inexpensive dress in the living room, suggesting that Julie, a single mother doing her best, was out of her depth trying to play with the big boys. This incident made me question the nature of the family dynamics I had admired. The teasing I had once dismissed as harmless took on a more malicious tone over time. Amy frequently gathered with Ethan and Brian to whisper and laugh at the expense of others, making snide remarks about various family members and friends. It felt increasingly uncomfortable to witness. On one Easter Sunday, I reached my limit. Amy was in the living room, casually critiquing another relative's financial decisions, when I couldn't hold back any longer. Standing up, I confronted her about the rudeness of her remarks, hoping to defend those who were being subtly bullied. The room fell silent, and Amy, with a sharp tone of sarcasm, dismissed my concerns, suggesting I was too sensitive. At that moment, I looked to Ethan for support, hoping he would stand by me. The realization that my once beloved family gatherings had a hidden undercurrent of meanness was disheartening, and it prompted me to reevaluate the dynamics of the family I had once so eagerly wanted to be a part of. After Ethan's disappointing reaction, family gatherings morphed into an ordeal for me. I would often find myself isolated, sipping on a drink while Ethan remained glued to his mother's side. He would occasionally send apologetic looks my way, but never did he join me to offer the support I needed. One evening, after enduring another difficult dinner, I confronted him. "Why can't you ever stand up to her?" I asked, the frustration evident in my voice. Ethan, looking weary, ran his hand through his hair. "She's my mother, Lisa. What do you expect me to do?" "I expect you to tell her she's being cruel." "I expect you to stand by me," I insisted. But he never did, and as a result, I began to invent excuses to avoid these painful family events, citing sudden work crises or migraines, anything to escape the harsh whispers and cold stares. Just as I thought our situation couldn't become more strained, life threw a significant twist our way. I was pregnant. Discovering the pregnancy left me with a mix of emotions, holding the test with shaking hands and calling out for Ethan, who came rushing, concern painting his features. When I showed him the test, his reaction, a mixture of shock and relief, pulled me into a brief hope that perhaps this new life might mend the growing fissures between us. However, the pregnancy proved to be anything but easy. I faced constant nausea and dizziness, with the looming threat of miscarriage hovering over me, forcing me into bed rest and eventually quitting my job as my condition worsened and my eyesight began to deteriorate, a rare but potentially permanent complication. During this vulnerable time, I felt Ethan drifting further away, often returning home late, if at all, leaving me to face my challenges alone. The day of my scheduled C-section arrived sooner than expected due to my vision issues, making natural birth too risky. Lying on the operating table, filled with a blend of fear and anticipation, I asked for Ethan, only to be told by a nurse that he had chosen to wait outside. The surgery itself went smoothly, and hearing my son's first cries was a transcendent moment, filling me with an overwhelming rush of love. However, the joy was short-lived as Ethan eventually appeared in the recovery room, his discomfort and annoyance barely concealed. "Lisa, we need to talk. This isn't right," he began abruptly. His words, dismissing the necessity of my surgery and lamenting the presence of men during childbirth as against old norms, struck a deep chord of pain within me. As he stormed out, claiming the hospital environment was too much for him, I was left alone, reeling not only from his words but also from the reality of our situation. The subsequent weeks were a haze of sleepless nights and constant feedings, with Ethan's presence becoming rarer, leaving me to navigate the challenging waters of new motherhood by myself. Ever since our son was born, Ethan barely helped with his care and often complained. "Can't you shut him up?" he'd growl as our baby cried through the night. "I'm trying," I'd reply, my voice heavy with exhaustion. "He's teething, Ethan. It hurts him." But Ethan had no patience for it. "All you do is focus on the kid. What about me? What about our sex life?" I was astonished by his lack of understanding and compassion, especially as I was still recovering from major surgery and running on minimal sleep. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan's dissatisfaction only grew. One evening, while I was trying to soothe our fussy 7-month-old, he bluntly stated, "You need to go back to work." I was shocked. "What?" "But the baby," I began. "We'll hire a nanny," he interrupted. "We can't keep living like this, Lisa. We need the money." Despite wanting to argue that our son needed me and that I wasn't ready to return to work, the resolute look in his eyes silenced me. With a heavy heart, I began job hunting. Finding work with my compromised vision was challenging. I eventually secured a position at a smaller company, although the pay was less than before. When I informed Ethan, his response was predictably dismissive. "That's it," he scoffed. "We're paying a nanny for this?" Tears welled up in my eyes. "I'm doing my best, Ethan." "It's not easy with my eyesight," I pleaded. "Excuses," he muttered, walking away. This marked the beginning of my new reality. Rushing to work each morning, guilt gnawing at me as I left my baby with a nanny, struggling through the day with my limited vision, and then coming home to a resentful husband and a son who desperately needed my attention. Time passed in a blur of work, childcare, and escalating tension at home. Before I knew it, 3 years had gone by since my son's birth. Despite the difficulties, I cherished him deeply and found joy in his milestones. Family gatherings continued to be stressful, particularly because of Amy's behavior. She would perform the role of the doting grandmother when others were watching, but her disinterest was obvious. "Come to Grandma," she'd coo in a sweet voice, arms outstretched towards my son. Yet, he would cling to me, turning his face away from this woman he barely knew. Amy's expression would sour. "What have you been telling him about me?" she'd hiss accusingly. "You're turning my grandson against me." I'd try to explain, weary. "He just doesn't know you well, Amy. If you visited more often," but she would cut me off. "Don't you dare blame this on me," and storm off to complain to Ethan. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, my world was thrown off balance, once again. Holding a pregnancy test, my heart pounding, I saw the positive result. Fear enveloped me. My first pregnancy had been so fraught, my health so compromised. Could my body handle another? As I pieced together the timeline, I realized I was already well into my first trimester. The decision, it seemed, had been made without my full awareness. With trembling hands, I called Ethan at work to share the news. His response was terse. "What is it?" he asked, a note of impatience in his voice. "Ethan, I'm pregnant," I said, my voice faltering. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, dismissively, "Look, Lisa, I'm busy. We'll talk later. Just don't quit your job, all right? We can't afford that." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone, feeling more isolated than ever. Thankfully, this pregnancy was less arduous than my first. The morning sickness was bearable, and my vision remained stable, allowing me to continue working. I was determined to support my growing family. However, as my belly grew, the distance between Ethan and me seemed to widen further. He increasingly spent his time at his mother's house, often returning home late. One evening, exhausted from managing our toddler and my pregnancy, I asked Ethan for help as he walked through the door. "Hey, can you read him a story?" "I'm exhausted," I said, hopeful for some assistance. Ethan glanced at us, then at his watch. "Can't." I promised Mom I'd help remove some furniture. "Don't wait up." And with that, he was gone, leaving me alone with our son and my tears. As my 7th month of pregnancy came around, I prepared for Thanksgiving. Guests began to arrive in the afternoon, including my parents who immediately pitched in. The house filled with the comforting buzz of chatter and laughter. Just before dinner, the doorbell rang again. It was Brian, Ethan's younger brother, and he wasn't alone. "Everyone, this is Christine," Brian announced, introducing his fiancée. The room's mood shifted to joyous congratulations. Amy arrived shortly after, her eyes lighting up at Christine. Throughout dinner, she showered Christine with attention, asking about her job as a manager at a national bank. "How prestigious," Amy gushed, clearly impressed. Then, in a louder voice meant for all to hear, Amy said, "Christine here makes $220,000 a month. Now that's the kind of daughter-in-law I've always dreamed of. Smart, beautiful, successful." Her words stung, especially as she threw a pointed look my way, adding, "Unlike some people who can only pop out babies and breed poverty." I felt my cheeks heat up with humiliation. My mother bristled beside me, ready to defend me, but I gently stopped her, not wanting to escalate the situation. "You know," Amy continued, her voice dripping with faux sweetness, "why don't we continue this lovely evening at that new restaurant downtown?" My treat, of course. Before I knew what was happening, Amy, along with Ethan, Brian, and Christine, were heading out the door. Ethan didn't even glance back. The departure drained the festive spirit from the room, and soon, our other guests began to leave, offering thin excuses. Only my parents remained in their presence a silent support in the suddenly quiet house. But I declined their help, insisting that they too needed to rest. Once they left, I sank into the couch, overcome with tears. As the hours trickled by, my sobs echoed through the quiet house, my hand resting on my growing belly, lost in thoughts of how my life had spiraled to this point. It was nearing dawn when I heard the front door creak open. Ethan stumbled in, reeking of alcohol and cigarette smoke, without a word, heading straight to our bedroom. With trembling hands, I picked up my phone and scrolled through social media. There, captured in a series of photos, were Amy, Ethan, Brian, and Christine, all smiles at an upscale nightclub. The caption stung, "Best Thanksgiving ever with my real family." As my due date neared, a mix of excitement and anxiety filled me. The doctors had scheduled another C-section, given the short interval since my last. Despite trying to focus on the arrival of our new baby, doubts about Ethan clouded my thoughts. One cold winter afternoon, I noticed Ethan unpacking bags full of summer clothes. Confused, I asked, "What's all this?" "Just saw a good sale. Thought I'd update my wardrobe," he replied, avoiding my gaze. It didn't quite add up, but with the baby on the way, I pushed my suspicions aside. I had been saving diligently, ensuring we had enough for the mortgage, bills, and even a babysitter for our 4-year-old. Thankfully, my workplace had approved 3 months of unpaid leave. 5 days before my scheduled C-section, chaos erupted. I was resting when Ethan and Amy burst through the door, urgency in their steps. Following them to our bedroom, I found Ethan hurriedly packing the new clothes. "Ethan," I said, my voice rising with panic, "what are you doing?" "We're all going to Brian's wedding in Hawaii," he replied curtly. "But my C-section is in 5 days. Who's going to take care of our son?" I protested. "You'll manage." "You always do," Ethan said coldly, zipping up his suitcase. Before I could utter another word, he and Amy were out the door, leaving me in a stunned silence. Reality hit me like a tidal wave. Frantically, I checked our joint account, empty. All the money I had saved was gone. With shaking fingers, I called Ethan. What? He snapped when he finally answered. The money. All our savings. Where is it? I stammered. After a pause, his cold laughter filled my ear. We needed it for Brian's wedding gift. Don't be so greedy, Lisa. Then, the line went dead. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my abdomen. Looking down, I saw a puddle forming at my feet. My water had broken. Panic gripped me as I realized the imminent risk to my previous C-section scar. Clutching my phone with one hand and my belly with the other, I dialed emergency services. The hospital was a whirlwind of activity, doctors shouting, machines beeping. I awoke hours later to the gentle beeping of monitors, my mother's tear-stained face hovering over me. Lisa, she whispered, squeezing my hand. You're okay? The baby's okay? Slowly, the reality of what had happened set in. I had nearly lost my life. My baby had nearly been lost. 5 days after my emergency C-section, I was feeling surprisingly resilient, both physically and emotionally. The doctors were impressed with my recovery and promptly gave me the green light to head home. During this time, Ethan hadn't bothered to call once, not to check if I was alive, nor to inquire about his new son. At that moment, I realized our marriage had irrevocably broken down. I reached out to my parents, asking if I could stay with them temporarily. They immediately welcomed me and my boys, offering not just a place to stay, but the emotional support I desperately needed. As they doted on their grandsons, I took the opportunity to rest and start researching divorce lawyers while gathering necessary financial documents. A week after leaving the hospital, Ethan finally called. I ignored his first 5 calls, answering only on the 3rd attempt. Where the hell are you? Why aren't you at home? He demanded, his voice a mix of anger and confusion. Calmly, I replied, I'm at my parents' house with our sons. I filed for divorce, Ethan. His reaction was a mixture of disbelief and mockery. Divorce? Are you kidding me? After everything I've done for you, he laughed bitterly. Everything you've done? I countered, anger rising. Like abandoning me right before I gave birth, or stealing our savings? Oh, get over it. He scoffed dismissively. I'll pay you back. No problem. In fact, I don't even want to see you again. Do you know why? Because I'm going to be rich. He rambled on about a job offer from Brian's new wife, Christine, who had promised to make him wealthy beyond belief through a new financial venture. You never believed in me, Lisa, he spat. You always held me back. Well, guess what? I'm free now. And you? You're just a loser who can't see potential when it's right in front of her. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly swift. Ethan didn't contest much. He returned the money he had taken and agreed to pay alimony. Since I had been the one making the mortgage payments, evidenced by years of bank statements, the judge awarded me the house without hesitation. The day I moved back into what was now my house, Ethan was there, packing his last belongings. He sneered as I entered with our baby and our toddler by my side. Enjoy this dump while you can, he jeered, carrying a box. I'll be in a mansion soon, swimming in cash. You'll see what you missed out on. As he left, a profound sense of relief washed over me. The house felt larger, brighter, and free from the shadow of his presence. A year and a half later, life had settled into a new rhythm for me and my boys. I had returned to work and found a balance between my career and motherhood. It wasn't always easy, but we were content, healthy, and thriving. Then one ordinary Tuesday, my phone buzzed with a news alert that made my jaw drop. Local banker exposed as fraud, leaves family in ruins. The article detailed a shocking scandal involving Christine, who had been running an elaborate con. She had persuaded Ethan, Brian, and Amy to invest in a non-existent financial company by taking out massive loans, leaving them facing financial ruin. They had even mortgaged Amy's house, investing every cent into this fictitious venture. Christine, it turned out, was not a banker at all. The office she had shown them was merely a short-term rental, a set piece in her grand deception. She vanished with millions, leaving behind nothing but forged documents and shattered dreams. To add insult to injury, I discovered they had also taken out an additional loan to fund Brian and Christine's extravagant wedding in Hawaii, the very event Ethan had abandoned us to attend. As I read through the shocking details, a mix of emotions swept over me: surprise, disbelief, and I must admit, a hint of vindication. The fallout was devastating. Unable to repay their enormous debts, they lost everything. Amy's house, their cars, and even their personal belongings were seized by creditors. They were left with nothing but overwhelming debt. I learned through the grapevine that Amy had resorted to working as a cashier, barely making enough to afford a small apartment and groceries. Ethan and Brian found themselves in dire straits, their dreams of affluence and success utterly destroyed. I felt a profound sense of relief that I had divorced Ethan when I did, sparing my children and myself from the financial ruin that engulfed my ex-husband's family. Just when I thought I had moved past these tumultuous events, my phone rang. It was Amy's number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Lisa," Amy's voice came through, timid and unlike her usual commanding tone. "We need your help," she pleaded, asking if they could stay with us. "The children need their father and grandmother," she insisted. "You can't turn your back on family in times like this." I took a deep breath, memories of past hurts flooding back. The Thanksgiving humiliations, being left alone while pregnant and on the brink of giving birth, and all the times they had belittled and dismissed me. "Family?" I replied, my voice firm. "You weren't concerned about family when you left me alone, pregnant and in danger. You weren't concerned about family when you helped steal my savings. You weren't concerned about family when you insulted me." Amy attempted to interrupt, but I pressed on. "I'm sorry for what you're going through, Amy, but I am not responsible for the choices you, Ethan, and Brian made. My priority is my children, and I cannot expose them to the instability you've brought upon yourselves. Please do not contact us again." I ended the call and immediately blocked her number. As I set down the phone, a weight seemed to lift off my shoulders. It was finally truly over.